What about Canada? We've got a bit of a rift there lately, and there's different accounts between you and Prime Minister Mark Carney about that call this week post Davos with President Trump. He says that he dug in and reinforced the message. You said that he walked it back.
I was on the call. Prime Minister Carney, in my investment career, I've seen what happens when a technocrat tries to pivot and become a politician. It never really works out well. So I would just encourage Prime Minister Carney to do what he thinks is best for the Canadian people, not his own virtue signaling, because we do have a USMCA negotiation coming up, and he rose to power on an anti-American, anti-Trump message, and that's not a great place to be when you're negotiating with an economy that is multiple larger than you are and your biggest trading partner. In the end, I think we will end up in a good place. It may not be a straight line.
Are you saying that they will face consequences in these trade negotiations, reopening the USMCA?
I am saying that I would not pick a fight going into USMCA to score some cheap political points. Either you are working for your own political career or you're working for the Canadian people.
What about our
Shots fired. Oh, we got Scott Bessent and Mark Carney duking it out, guys. We got them duking it out, and you guessed it. I had to talk about this today, guys. Alberta Separatists met with U.S. officials. Eby calls it treason. Smith is defending them. But here's the thing that nobody really wants to say. In my opinion, they're both wrong. And Canada's hypocrisy is just amazing, to be honest. Let's get into it right away. No need to wait. It goes, and today is Friday, January 30th. This is Canuck News, guys. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith said Thursday that she won't demonize the roughly 1 million Albertans who are open to separation after BC Premier David Eby said a group of Alberta separatists who went to Washington in search of political support are engaging in treason. I mean, that's... If you want political support, if you want international support for a separatist movement... No, let me rephrase this. You need international support for a separatist movement. Like that's Eby, who along with Miss Smith and other provincial and territorial premiers was in Ottawa Thursday for a First Minister's meeting with Prime Minister Mark Carney, was referencing a report in the Financial Times which said that Trump administration had held covert meetings with Alberta separatists. Mr. Eby said he would be raising the issue during Thursday's meeting. Later in the day, Mr. Carney said he expects the U.S. administration to respect Canadian sovereignty. Ms. Smith expressed a similar sentiment, adding that she would have her representative in Washington discuss the matter with the U.S. officials. The Premier maintained that she and her party support a strong and sovereign Alberta within a united Canada. Danielle Smith has to say this. She's in a weird political spot. We don't really know how openly she supports the actual separatist movement. She might be playing federalist so that she's under the radar, trying to tame the situation, or she might be actually be supporting it. We don't really know. It's hard to tell. The thing is, she has to be playing this game within Canada until we see what the actual sentiment is of the people. If Alberta comes out with 60% yes, let's separate, then she's going to be playing a different tune 100%. National unity concerns were top of mind ahead of the meeting on Parliament Hill. National unity concerns were top of mind. National unity concerns should never be a concern. The reason why national unity concerns should never be a concern is because if you have a national strategy that all provinces nationwide are taking part in, then you should never be worried about national unity. National unity should just be expected because everybody's working towards it together. The only times this is a problem is when everyone's not working towards it together. And then you can start pointing fingers as to who's the culprit, right? A referendum on Alberta sovereignty could take place this fall, while the Sovereigntist Party Québécois is leading public opinion polls ahead of a fall election and is promising a third Quebec sovereignty referendum if the party returns to power. And Quebec's in a serious problem, but no one's talking about Quebec, right? No one's talking about Quebec. The conservative, the CAQ just completely they might as well just give up, right? That's how bad they've run the province. The Liberals also, they had that, their leader in Quebec, I think it was Rodriguez. He had that scandal that he's pulling away from for bribery. So both parties are now they're so disgraced. Essentially, they have to have their own local elections for Quebec to come in, and the Parti Québécois is just they're salivating at the idea. And so Mr. Carney has long urged premiers to present a united response to tariff and trade threats from the U.S. That push has gained urgency in recent weeks as a review of the North American Free Trade Pact draws near and as Ottawa manages an apparent rift with the U.S. President Donald Trump over the Prime Minister's speech at the World Economic Forum in which he criticized American policy. First of all, to have a united front, you have to have a united country. That's number one. Why is the country not united? Why is the country not united? This is the essential question that the Liberal government has to be asking itself. It seems to be, it's going through motions as if it's asking itself and trying to address them, but it's not actually doing anything concrete about it. There's just pen to paper, there's just promises being made and signed like memorandums of understanding, which actually don't mean anything. But there's no shovels being pushed into the ground. That's how you create unity. And this is why this whole Alberta separatist issue has been created. The other thing, the tariffs wouldn't be hurting Canada as much if Canada had a domestic economy that was resilient, but it doesn't. So that's why this hurts so much. Mr. Eby and Ms. Smith have been at odds for months over Alberta's November agreement with Ottawa to prioritize a new Alberta bitumen pipeline through British Columbia to the Pacific. The pipeline proposal has the potential of being referred to the federal government's new major projects office, which has the task of accelerating nation-building infrastructure. They're accelerating nation-building infrastructure to the degree that nothing has actually been signed. Nothing has been pushed forward. Nothing has been pushed forward. Like, they haven't actually said, this is happening, now we're going to deal with the regulation. No. Let's talk about it. Let's sign memorandums of understanding. And let's talk about it for another 2 years, and then let's see what's going to happen. Guys, in 2 years, the world can be a completely different place. The two premiers convened Wednesday with Mr. Carney for a meeting that Mr. Eby described as a borderline friendly, but Mr. Eby raised a new point of concern with Alberta on his way into Thursday's meetings. To go to a foreign country and to ask for assistance in breaking up Canada, there's an old-fashioned word for that, and that word is treason, he said. The BC Premier repeated that view at a closing news conference along Mr. Carney, Ms. Smith, and other premiers. In my opinion, that is treasonous activity, and it needs to be called out, and it needs to be stopped, he said. When he asked to respond, Ms. Smith said she would expect the U.S. government would respect Canada's sovereignty. And I want to stop here, guys. I want to call out this hypocrisy that we have going on here, right? Because Canada's track record for supporting separatist movements around the globe is staggering. The whole Yugoslav conflict in Europe in the 90s, from the breakup of Croatia from Yugoslavia, from the breakup of Bosnia from Yugoslavia, that was all supported by Canada. No one said, hey, we should leave Yugoslavia, a country that we used as a tampon country, a border country between the Iron Curtain and the West. We should try and get them to, make amends and maybe bring them into NATO instead of having a bloodbath of a civil war for 4 years. No. Let's support that. Let them kill each other. Have this mass displacement happen, of the peoples. You can say what you want about them. I'm Serbian. We all speak the same language there. All of them speak the same language. It's different religions. So that's okay. That's okay, right? And then you have the Kosovo conflict in 1998, 99. So that happens as well. We're going to support the Kosovo terror, the Albanian separatists, which were considered, the KLA was considered a terrorist organization at the time. We'll support them, and then we're going to support unilateral independence of Kosovo in 2008 from Serbia. Right. Okay. And then we have Libya in 2011, right, where Canada actually supported the bombing of Muammar Gaddafi. Libya is now a failed state, but we supported that, right? No Gaddafi, right? And then also Sudan as well. South Sudan, we supported, enthusiastically backed the independence referendum for South Sudan. We even provided them over $1 billion for that. South Sudan is like literally the poorest country right now on the planet. So all of this can happen, right? All of these separatist movements can happen. But when Albertans who are rightfully pissed off, go to talk to the US about having support for their separatist movement, that's now treason. And it is. It is. But you can't have that level of hypocrisy going into these things, because every separatist movement is based off of international support. If a separatist movement did not have international support, those breakaway states would just be pariahs and they would be failed states immediately. So what these guys are doing in Alberta, it makes sense. That's the move to make. If you wanted to separate from Canada, the first thing you would do is you would go to the US, because who's going to back you out other than the US in Canada? That's the only country bordering you. Of course you're going to go to them, and they're much larger. Let's keep it going, guys. Let's keep it going. It goes, when asked to respond, Ms. Smith said she would expect the US government would respect Canada's sovereignty. And she goes, but I think we also have to be realistic that for 10 years under Justin Trudeau's government, our province was relentlessly attacked in reference to Mr. Carney's predecessor. She said polls show that as many as 30% of Albertans lost hope. I'm not going to demonize marginalize a million of my fellow citizens when they've got legitimate grievances, she said. What we need to do is we need to give Albertans hope. Alberta's population is not that big. 30% million people. That means they have like 4 million people there. Around like 4 to 5 million people live in Alberta. If a million people are saying fuck you to the federal government, that's a serious thing. And you need to address those questions. And so Eby can be talking treason all he wants. He can be saying that all he wants, but the fact of the matter is, Smith is right about one thing. The federal government created this. And she says 10 years of attacks on Alberta. Sure, it was 10 years, right? There's been no new pipelines to Tidewaters. Not the Northern Gateway. That was canceled. The Energy East was also canceled. It was killed. The Trans Mountain Pipeline took 7 years and a federal takeover to happen. They've had emissions caps literally specifically targeting their oil and gas. They had the equalization taking Albertan money, sending it over to Quebec, and we've seen how Quebec has been handling it. And the federal government has just systematically treated Albertan energy as a climate problem and not as a national asset. And so 30% of Albertans are open to separation. That's 1 million people, guys. This isn't fringe. People are actually genuinely angry. And Eby is deflecting because BC is a part of the problem. BC blocked Albertan pipelines for years, and BC regulations delayed the Trans Mountain Pipeline. And now he's going around lecturing about national unity. Guys, where was this concern for unity when BC was blocking Alberta's economic access to the Pacific markets? No. It's easier to say, these guys are treasonous than to address why 30% of these people are pissed off. And we can blame it on the last 10 years, sure. But it's a much wider problem because Canada is just simply, since we've had the free trade deal signed with the US in the late 80s, and we opened our markets like that, we've stopped developing a domestic economy. It's just as simple as that. We've stopped developing domestically. And what you get now is you have your whole economy geared towards the US. Now you're complaining about tariffs. And because you have no national strategy, you haven't built pipelines going coast to coast from Alberta to supply your own people with the oil that's in the ground. It's a shame. It's really a shame. It actually it pisses me off quite a bit, to be honest. But it's It's a shame. I'm going to scroll down here. I want to get into what Jeff Rath says here. Jeff Rath, the unofficial leader of Alberta's independence movement, has been open about the fact that his group has made visits to Washington, which is confirmed by U.S. officials in the Financial Times. He told the Globe and Mail in an interview last week that he and his colleagues have twice met with U.S. State Department officials and they're planning a February meeting with the U.S. Treasury. He has declined to say who specifically he has met, arguing that he's not obligated to share those details as a private citizen. When I'm saying we're meeting at the highest level of the U.S. government, we are meeting with the highest levels of the U.S. government. Yeah, because they'd be interested to see what these guys have to say. Obviously, that makes sense. They're not going to talk to, a local mayor. They're going to talk to somebody that, in the federal government. Mr. Rath said in a Thursday interview that the State Department officials in meetings have described U.S. statehood as an impossibility because the U.S. Senate would never vote in favor of it. It's not going to happen. We had a conversation about that. It was very frank. There's no agreement because we are private citizens. We do not have the authority to agree to anything. Yeah, obviously. They don't have the authority to agree to anything because Alberta hasn't separated. So they have, what they're saying currently still has no weight, right? But we'll see what happens if they get that weight, right? If Alberta becomes a nation state, they might want to do that, become a U.S. state. They'll probably be freer under the U.S. than under Canada. It's very possible. And then they said discussions about a $500 billion line of credit have also been purely exploratory, he said, describing the broad discussions as part of a feasibility study that would be turned into a roadmap for an independent Alberta government. He added that he and his colleagues are not soliciting money from the U.S. I want to talk about this as well because I don't think that the separatists are right either, right? And look what they've been discussing essentially, right? They met with the State Department about U.S. statehood. The article says the State Department told them it's an impossibility. The Senate would never approve it, right? But they're still exploring it, and along with a $500 billion line of credit and a feasibility study for becoming a part of the U.S. So their independence movement is essentially discussing subordination to the U.S. So it's not really independence. They're looking to go from Canada to be a part of the U.S. So they're just switching subordinates. They're trading Ottawa with Washington. And the U.S. Treasury Secretary Besson called Alberta a natural partner for the U.S. And they are, of course. The U.S. has no emission caps. They have none of that stuff, and they love oil. Of course, they're a natural partner. But what does natural partner really mean? Guys, because it doesn't really sound like it's respecting Albertan sovereignty, right? And Rath says they need U.S. statehood to be protected from a retaliatory Canada. And so the plan for independence requires foreign protection from your own country. Guys, that's not independence. That's dependence again. And why this really matters to Canadians in this whole situation, guys. The separatists are wrong because they're discussing U.S. statehood. No, not independence. They're trading Ottawa for Washington. That's subordination. The federal government created the problem. They've been attacking Albertan energy for 10 years at least. There's been no pipelines. There's been emission caps. They've treated the province like an enemy, and 30% of the population is open to leaving. Guys, that's a serious issue. Eby is deflecting. He calls it treason instead of addressing causes. BC blocked pipelines for years. And now he's lecturing about unity, and the federal government never stepped in to protect national interests. Oil is a national interest. It is. And Canada's hypocritical about this whole separatist movement in general because it supported separatists forever. And they never cared about borders when it suited Canadian interests. And the deeper issue is Canada abandoned coherent nationalist strategy after free trade in 1989, guys. This is what I want to see happen in Canada is economic nationalism. We had the national policy in 1879, guys, where the tariffs, the railways, the settlement, nation building happened. Then we had the post-World War II era, Coe's industrial planning. We had the Auto Pact, the value-added manufacturing. And then 1989 came, where we had the free trade agreement between governments, and it retreated from proactive industrial strategies. And what happened? We relied on the US market access instead of building domestic capacity. And now we are where we are. The result is quite literally by the 2000s, our primary resource of exports climbed back to nearly 50% of merchandise exports, guys. We literally just became exporters of natural resources instead of building cool things. This is what happens when you have no economic vision. This is like, we've done this to ourselves, guys. You get Quebec separatism. It's been ongoing since the 60s. You get Alberta separatism now. It's 30% of the population is open to it right now. You get companies like Nutrien in Saskatchewan, who instead of shipping potash across Canada through the port of Vancouver, they're going to go through the state of Washington. So it's cheaper for them, and there's better infrastructure for them to transport potash, one of Canada's biggest resources, one of the biggest exports that we have in vast abundance, and we have the most of it in the world. We're not going to export it through the port of Vancouver. No. We're going to export it. They're going to export it through the state of Washington, guys. And because our rail sucks, and because the port of Vancouver can't support that amount of exports. Take that in. I wouldn't even be surprised if David Eby was like, oh yeah, potash. If potash spills in the ocean, it's gonna kill a bunch of fish. We can't do it. Provinces are looking elsewhere because the federal government is offering them nothing. This is why this is happening, guys. And every separatist movement needs international support. Of course, Alberta's separatists went to Washington. Where else are they gonna go? That's how separatism works. And Canada knows, because we've backed separatists abroad for decades. Guys, the difference, those served Canadian interests, and this is blowback from failing to serve provincial interests at home. This is all I have for you guys today. I hope you guys liked today's episode. Please like, share, and subscribe. Please comment in the comment section below. I love to hear what you guys think about what's going on with all this rhetoric and all of this stuff going on in Alberta. My name is Miloš Krajčnik. Stay informed, stay curious, and God bless Canada.
This is Canada. Maple syrup and like Cabin say. Kick your ass all hockey season.